my fellow YouTubies. Welcome back to my channel. So, I started talking about spiritual autonomy in a previous video, and I wanted to get back on that subject. So, I had a moment. I was listening to something, and something of what I heard triggered kind of a channeling or just thoughts that of that subject and how to explain it more, at least from my point of view. So I took a lot of notes, and I'm going to kind of read what I wrote and then comment on some of what I read so that there's more elaboration on this, or just I'll see how it goes. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But this is just, I'm going to read from my notes. So, a question that I ask when it comes to spiritual autonomy is, are you in the driver's seat of your physical body? I used to have these dreams that I would be in a car that was driving out of control, and I would be in the passenger seat, and in my dream I wouldn't know how to drive, and so the car would just veer out of control, and I didn't know, like I would try to get in the in the driver's seat, and I would not be able to gain control of the vehicle. And I thought that was very symbolic for my life in general, of just not feeling like I had control of my life and of the direction of where I was going. And in reality, it took me a long time before I started actually driving. And it just felt like such a symbolic thing for me when I actually began to start driving and got the car and everything like that, because it felt like I was finally gaining control of my life. So it was beyond just being able to drive a car and get around in that way. It was more symbolic for me of like, okay, now I feel more confident to have control of my life, to have the reins of my life. So if you're riding a horse, to have control of the reins, I don't believe in controlling other beings. So I think a car is a better metaphor, just because it's more of like a non-living thing. But to get back to the point, being spiritually autonomous is being fully embodied and being inside your body, knowing why you do the things you do, what motivates you, and even if those things that you do are not of your highest good or of your, highest potential, or, come from like lower parts of your being. So I'll continue. Are your thoughts and actions heart-centered? Or are your decisions and motivations based on what you've been taught and how you've been indoctrinated? So a lot of how we are in this world is based on what we've been taught, and we could have been brought up in a really toxic environment, or just some people are brought up in cults, and some religions are very cult-like, in the sense that you have no autonomy, you have no free thought, you have no option to think or do for yourself or act in your own, on your own accord. So that's another question to pose for yourself. And indoctrination comes in many forms. Like if you've gone to public school, even private school, like school in general is a form of indoctrination. The way your parents raise you, if they're very influenced by social standards, if they're not free thinkers, that in a sense puts you in a frame of losing some sense of spiritual autonomy over your being, because again, you're acting from influence outside of your core, outside of what you feel and believe from your center, and you may not even be connected to that part of yourself. So to continue, I think and I wonder if there are any original thoughts that we call our own. Some say there aren't. They say that we pull thoughts or channel or receive thoughts from etherical or from an etheric or channel or receive thoughts from an etheric collective bank of thoughts and ideas, and that no one thought is original or new. Okay, so let me start that over because that was a bit of a jumble. Some say that we pull our thoughts or channel or receive thoughts from an etheric collective bank of thoughts and ideas, and that no one thought is original or new. So I do kind of believe that, like, I do come from, or I do have the belief that no single thought is original, or we are all one in a sense. We're all from the same place, or we're all connected in some form or some way. So any thought that may come to us can be shared because of our, collection or collective connectedness. So I do believe that in a sense. But I do also believe that we can be more connected to our heart center, and from that space have thoughts and ideas that are not, those of the status quo. So wherever culture you're raised in or community, or, you can have ideas that, and thoughts and ideas and feel, that deviate from where you were ever taught or indoctrinated, raised, whatever you want to call it. So, and I quoted, there's nothing new under the sun. So that's something I do believe. So, to continue reading, however, when we are not heart-centered with an integrated shadow self, we can become vessels for our lower extremities. Okay, let's continue. I think about violent police and policymakers that work against the best interests of humankind. I think about what drives them. Are they independent thinkers? Or have they forsaken their physical form to be vessels for their unintegrated shadow selves, whose agendas are to maintain order of destructive anti-human systems, anti-life systems? So that's one of the things that motivated me to write this. It's like, I always think about, just the state of the world that we're in right now. And it doesn't matter what your belief systems are, with the chaos and, wars, all of the destruction that is happening. Are those actions heart-centered? To me, if you believe in imposing suffering on another group of people, that can't possibly be heart-centered. And any form of destruction, destroying this place that we call Earth, that is our home, any sort of belief system that supports that, to me, cannot be heart-centered. Because again, we are all one. So if there's aspects of ourselves that want to destroy the other, then that is kind of that. It's just anti-life, anti-love. So what motivates that? And I believe that It's the unintegrated shadowy parts of ourselves. So from a collective level, if we look at ourselves on a whole, it's no surprise that our shadow self is devouring, or from what it looks like, devouring the love and heart-centered part of ourselves, because collectively we are not integrating that part of ourselves. We refuse to look at that part of ourselves and acknowledge the shadowy aspects of ourselves and allow it, so look at it, acknowledge it, accept it as a part of us, and bring it in. So that might not be the best way of saying it, but I'll continue reading. So I think about what drives them. Are they independent thinkers, or have they forsaken their physical form to be vessels for their unintegrated shadowy parts, whose agendas are to maintain order of destructive anti-human systems, anti-life systems? Okay, I already read that, but I read it again. When we ignore and deny our shadow, is it stirred to take over our being? When we don't acknowledge our shadow without judgment and wholly love our shadowy aspects, are they not moved to become the ruler of our being? So there's a saying, I think it's a Native American, like I don't want to say proverb, but it talks about like the hungry wolves that live within us, and there's a light and a dark one, and whatever we feed the most is what overtakes us. And I think it's healthy, obviously, to feed, our lighter aspects, but just as important as it is to feed that side of ourselves or that aspect of ourselves, it's important to acknowledge our darker, shadowy aspects, as to not, because it denies our wholeness. It's like, it's being in a state of, it's a state of denial. And being in a state of denial makes you vulnerable, makes us vulnerable to succumb to actions of that darker, shadowy aspect of ourselves, unbeknownst to us. It's almost like you could just black out. And, I guess a good example is like Lord of the Rings, when there's this power with this ring. There's something about it that's just so insatiable. That's the power of the ring. And anybody, who gets their hands on the ring, like, that brings out their shadow self, like, to the umpteenth power. And if anyone's trying to get the ring back from them, they lose their minds. They become a demon in that moment. Even the most light, bright, beautiful being, that's when their dark side shows up. So we have to know and acknowledge our triggers, know and acknowledge where that darkness comes from. Why is it there? Like, what motivates those parts of ourselves to come out, to come to life, to become animated, And the ring, in the ring, or in the Lord of the Rings, that it has its own kind of magic and lore, that particular ring, but I feel like it's very symbolic of, being something to trigger that shadowy aspect to come forth. So when we ignore and deny our shadow? Is it aroused? I said stirred before, but is it aroused to take over our being? When we don't acknowledge our shadow without judgment and wholly love our shadowy aspects, are they not moved to become the ruler of our being? These are questions that I ask. Why do we have systems of oppression? Why? What is that about? Why do we want to cause each other suffering? Why? Why do we have people that are seemingly willing to participate, or willing participants in destroying our ecosystem and our home? This planet is our home. Why do we uphold such anti-life systems? What motivates us to do that? My answer is that we lack spiritual autonomy. I think about that statement in the Bible, forgive us, Father, for we know not what we do. And I find that to be such an accurate statement because, again, lacking self-awareness and lacking integration of that darker part of ourselves, we do not know what we do. We do not know when we cause harm. We do not know when our vessel is being used by our lower extremities of our soul to cause harm. It's like, I say it again, it's like we black out in that moment, or we become unconscious, we become disembodied in those moments. And we may look back and be like, oh, I don't know why I acted like that, or I don't know why I reacted like that. Or we might not even, sometimes people don't even remember when they get into those spaces of those states of being, of acting from their shadowy aspects, because it's like a switch almost that goes off. So we can unconsciously act in malicious and mean-spirited ways because we do not integrate the side of ourselves that is malicious. So we have shame about that part of ourselves. We feel like, oh, I shouldn't. It's like we don't want to claim that because we have shame about it. We don't say, yeah, I can be malicious sometimes. Like accepting it, not shaming ourselves for it. Accepting it lovingly and knowing that that's not how you want to be all the time. And when you know that about yourself, you can almost manage it. If you feel triggered to be malicious, you can say, ooh, you feel the feelings coming up. And you say, you know what? I'm not going to act on that feeling. I'm not going to act on whatever's triggering me right now as a way to expel those feelings of shame and self-doubt or whatever it is that comes up when we feel triggered. And it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work to get to know ourselves fully and wholly and integrate ourselves fully and wholly. So it took me some time to acknowledge my dark side without judgment. That side of myself hasn't disappeared or dissolved into the ethers. She's a very integral and loved part of my being. With her, I am whole. Becoming whole and balanced involves getting to know and understand the motivations of the shadowy side. It makes me think of Maleficent. This character is shown to be a villain, but every villain has their origin story, their story that broke them. We also have tools of indoctrination that have been used against us and have prevented us from truly knowing who and what we are. At our core, which is love. We act as drones to carry out the missions of other non-integrated selves due to our lack of self-connection and heart-centered inspiration. People use the term NPC, but yeah, I think it's a harsh term. I think it's there's so much disregard in that term for everybody's individual experience, and I feel like there's just so many areas in our life where indoctrination and cult is literally in the word culture, and there's so many different forms of cults just a multitude of ways, video game cults, religious cults, food, it's across the board. So any of these things that can distract us from connecting to the core of who we are, they can, we can just be on the surface in a sense, which makes it easier for us to be manipulatable. Manipulatable, that's not a word, but we'll just use it for now. Easy to manipulate and easy to control more than anything. Being distracted within culture can be a weakness in a lot of sense, and can again keep us from getting to know ourselves wholly. So I don't like the word NPC. I think it's not fair. It's not a fair word to use. And it's uncompassionate, as I put in my notes. Many of us have either lost our connection to our core, or were never allowed the opportunity to find that connection, resulting in us being easy to control and manipulate. How much agency do you have over your spiritual being? I'm bringing up again. I think it's important to look up shadow work. I'm still doing shadow work. I feel like it's a lifelong process, getting to know ourselves and digging deeper. We're just like an endless blossoming flower, or peeling of whatever you want to call it, but I'd prefer to call myself a flower. It's up to you. But there's just so many layers and so much to uncover about ourselves, about our being, which to me at the core is love. That's what we are in our wholeness. So I suggest to try to understand your dark side and what motivates that part of you. Give it love. Acknowledge it without judgment. So I wanted to quickly share a story. I had an experience, I feel like from the age of 5 onward, I was always a very loving child, and just circumstances in my home life and just in the world in general were just beating down that side of myself, just completely. It was just almost, I felt like it was being beaten out of me to this point where I was just numb to everything, numb to my reality. I was drinking, partying a lot, and just acting carelessly, not in my best interest or in the interest of people around me. I just didn't give a fuck. And it came to a point where I nearly lost myself. I felt like I literally had to fight for my life. I was having what felt like psychic attacks. And it felt like whatever was happening was outside of me, but everything that we experience is a part of ourselves. And that may be hard to understand, but I'll just explain it as I know it. I was feeling like whatever fight I was having, I needed to fight for my life because I felt like I was losing the light within me and that I was going to be completely overtaken by my shadowy aspect. And this one particular time in my life, in my early 20s, it literally felt like a fight for my life. And it was so difficult, but I feel that I've won that fight or won that battle and decided that I do not want to succumb to the lower extremities of my being, that I want to be of the light, but I don't want to deny those parts of me either. That's where I am now, is like acknowledging that those parts of me are a part of me, and to be whole, I have to accept that. So it was a fight for balance, and it was a fight for peace, for inner peace, more than anything. It was a fight for integration and a soul call for wholeness. Being whole gives you autonomy. Choices won't be made outside of consciousness or awareness. When we accept and love that side of ourselves, we become fully aware when we feel the urge to act from our lower regions of our being, and we understand it. Okay, I don't know if that made sense, but okay, yeah, being whole gives us autonomy. Choices won't be made outside of consciousness or awareness. When we accept and love that side of ourselves, we become fully aware when we feel the urge to act from our lower regions of our being and understand it. So we become aware of those moments that we're acting outside of love, and it's like we get into a place where we can call ourselves out, where we can say, I didn't like that, being connected to our feelings, being connected to how we may make other people feel, how we are dishonoring ourselves, like dishonoring our truth. So we're able to see the entire picture of who we are and how we show up in the world. And who we are at our core and why we are here. We are beings of love. We are love beings. We are here to share love and remind one another, and mostly ourselves, that we are love. And in our wholeness, we can radiate through time and space and inspire others to find their wholeness. So hopefully that made sense. It was kind of a clusterfuck, but yeah, it was just some thoughts that I wanted to share. And learning to love myself and love others and just be love every day through full integration and acknowledging all aspects of self. So love you guys. Have a wonderful day, and yeah, see you next time.